New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and good morning, everybody. So, what's up? How's it going? Chime in, join in, send some comments. But good morning, good day, whatever time it is, wherever it is that you are. Good morning and howdy, Wayne from Calgary. Today, we are back in our conversation of Science of Mind and Spirit. I'm Rev Dr Raymont Anderson, the Senior Minister and Founding Minister of the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a CSL teaching center. And I will be your host today as we dive into today's conversation, which is Chapter 8 of the textbook. Now, if you were here last week, if you weren't, I strongly recommend you go back and watch the recording because Reverend Robert Brzezinski was all in talking about this idea of visioning and what it means to have a vision and live your vision. Because having a vision feeds what it means to have a mission, feeds what it means to have a purpose and your values and your way of showing up in the world. Because ultimately, isn't that what Science of Mind and Spirit is? It gives us the ability to live out loud, to show up as these divine incarnations of the One. So what is your vision for your life? So yes, if you haven't watched it yet, put that on your to-do list. Now, let's breathe and get ready to jump in. So you might want to get, a notebook, some paper, something to chisel into the granite, because you're gonna want to, marinate on some of this as we go in. So for me, where we are now, it's about rediscovering what the Science of Mind and Spirit is, right? So for me, it's Science of Mind and Spirit 3.0. And what does that mean for us in the 21st century, currently in the year 2023, especially with all of the things that are going on in the world? How do we as metaphysicians, how do we as religious scientists, how do we as people who practice this thing called New Thought, how do we bring what we know that spirit is, not just into our individual lives, but into the collective? How do we shift consciousness? When Ernest Holmes references the race consciousness, the collective consciousness, how do we shift it so that things like racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., are no longer part of that paradigm or that consciousness? That's the kind of thing we're talking about with Science of Mind and Spirit 3.0. Now, today specifically, Chapter 8, we are talking about the power of thought. Okay? Now, if you don't have your textbook with you, come on. You got some time. Come on. When you have it ready, put it in the chat box that you have your textbook ready, because we're starting Chapter 8, page 137. Holmes mentions, he references a Bible verse. As a person thinketh in their heart, so they are. Say what now? As a person thinketh in their heart. Now, that's a key important thing to understand, because oftentimes we talk about one of the complaints that I hear a lot of people reference when they talk about religious science or science of mind and spirit is there's a lot of law, there's a lot of being in your head, and not enough love. Okay, so this is our invitation. When you are thinking from your heart, in your heart, as your heart space, your heart chakra, the energy of your heart, then you are in tune with the feeling, the emotion, the fuel that motivates and moves us into action. So a thought in and of itself, for example, if we're thinking of, say, New Year's, every year somebody somewhere is starting a New Year's resolution, and they're motivated, ready to jump in, ready to change their life, ready to do something. I'm going to stop doing this and start doing this. I'm fired up. And then January 1st comes, the ball drops, the confetti falls, and by January 3rd, it's just a repeat of the previous year for the person. Why? Because their heart is no longer in. It wasn't convicted to the change that they wanted to make. They had the idea, it was a thought, but it didn't have the emotional charge to move them in a committed, permanent, determined manner moving forward. So we're invited to be mindful of when we say things like unity and oneness and love and peace of mind and all these things that we throw in there referencing new thought and science of mind and spirit. Be mindful to connect with, how is that resonating emotionally for me? Because if we're going to really heal, then part of this means being willing to be uncomfortable in order to heal. It means having courageous and oftentimes challenging conversations with ourselves, with a loved one, with others, in order to shift the paradigms and the consciousness. So this feeling in the heart isn't always cotton candy, gumdrops, daffodils, and rainbows all the time. Sometimes the thought, peace on earth, goodwill for all, involves me recognizing, I feel afraid that I may be called to do more. I may be called to show up more, that scares me. So I withdraw. So being mindful of, what am I feeling when I'm thinking whatever it is that I'm thinking? What am I feeling? What am I thinking in my heart? Holmes goes on to say, it is one thing to know a principle. It is another thing to apply it. Wow. Yes, it is one thing to know. It's one thing to know. It's a completely different thing to apply. I can know what meditation is. I know what meditation is. I even know how it's done. But am I doing it? Am I doing it? Breathe. Because this is a call to action. We are being challenged to step into greater ways of being in terms of practicing science of mind and spirit, not just reading it, not just marinating on it, but actually engaging in the practice of it. Breathe. And as you see scrolling by, yes, if you have comments, questions, light up the chat. Whatever it is, questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, realizations, revelations, ahas, uh-ohs, all of that. Share. How do we apply? So if I'm thinking in my heart, What does it mean for me to apply it? I know that I feel afraid. I know the principles and practices of navigating and moving through. I know what that is. But how do I have a courageous conversation? How do I apply what it means to do a spiritual mind treatment? I can theoretically, yes, I know that there are 5 steps. And I know that the initials RURTR. It's easy for me to remember. I understand very well, very clearly. Yes. But are you doing a spiritual mind treatment daily or weekly? Are you engaging in the application of what it means to practice the philosophy, to practice the teaching? Not just to theoreticalize and theorize and marinate on and ruminate on, and because then it just stays in our heads and we're full of the knowledge. Ernest Holmes said, because years ago I was a Christian, fundamental Christian, and one of the things that got me kicked out of Bible, one of the many things that got me kicked out of Bible study at many churches, I asked questions. Why do we memorize scripture? Why do we memorize Bible verses, but we don't act upon them? Love thy neighbor as thyself. But then you turn right around and you badmouth this person, or you give that person the finger, or you harass. That's not loving thy neighbor. Why do we quote scripture, but we don't practice what we're quoting? Right? Now, we in New Thought may not go that far, but oftentimes I do hear many times we will quote something that Holmes said, but we will cherry pick in a way where the true application of what we are quoting, it would force us to a new level of consciousness. It would push us, if we're talking spiral dynamics, it would force our evolutionary hand to move from a first tier position to a second tier position. We're going to go from, blue and green and turquoise, like it's going to force us to shift if we are actively applying it. Breathe. Holmes says, and this isn't specifically in this chapter, but it's relevant. Holmes says, one of the greatest difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. Wax on, wax off. A lot of theory, a lot of thinking, a lot of but when it comes to the practice of it, when it comes to the application of it, when it comes to the living of it, not as much as we could. Too little practice. It doesn't say we don't practice it at all. Simply saying that there's too little of it. So how do we shift that? How do we change that? How do we increase the amount of practice? Well, let's start with the idea of the power of thought. What does it mean to be a thinking individual? How did you, for yourself, how did you develop the thoughts that you have about anything? Pick anything. Let's go with something many of us as children thought. The Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy. Where did the thought come from? What did we think about it? What did we believe about it? Do we still believe it now? Do we still believe that when a tooth comes out and put it under the pillow, that somebody, a Tinkerbell, somebody is going to come and give us a quarter or a silver dollar? Do we believe that now? Probably not. But why not? Did we outgrow that thought? Pause. Did we outgrow the thought of God that we had when we were 5 years old? Meaning, many of us who have come to New Thought, not all of us, because some people were raised in the teaching, but many of us came from something else. And in the grand culture, the grand scheme of the collective consciousness, God, 98% of the time, is an external anthropomorphized idea, an external anthropomorphized being that's usually up there in the clouds or beyond the clouds or sitting on a cloud or something, judging. And many of us who came from whatever that tradition is have brought that idea into New Thought. Many of us are still thinking of God as the giant taskmaster who is ready to reward and or punish us. For example, oftentimes I hear a lot of folks in New Thought say things referencing the cosmic 2x4. If I'm being struck by a cosmic 2x4 for not doing what I should do, that's still an external force punishing me for doing what it wanted me to do. That's still an anthropomorphized, archaic idea of the divine that is not the same idea that we understand in Science of Mind and Spirit. Breathe. Because we are invited to evolve beyond the 5-year-old thought patterns about God. We are invited to evolve beyond. I don't still wear the t-shirts and the socks that I wore when I was 5. I outgrew them. I don't even own them anymore. I completely got rid of them. Are we ready to completely get rid of the older, non-life affirming thoughts and ideas, beliefs and paradigms about God? Because ultimately, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, ultimately, whatever it is we are thinking about God, the power of our thoughts, whatever we are thinking about God affects how we live our lives. If I am living in a manner where I am expecting the other shoe to drop, I am expecting the universe to punish me for whatever, I'm expecting blessings if I do good and punishments. I'm expecting karma to slap me. Like I'm expecting all of that. Then I'm going to live my life in a very limited, fearful manner. And we understand from our we believe statements, we believe, number 5 says, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Are we living our lives in a manner where we are emancipating ourselves, liberating ourselves, freeing ourselves from any thoughts, beliefs, and paradigms that are not life affirming and that are holding us in an experience that we desire to release, to be released from? Breathe. When we talk about thinking, thoughts, the power of thinking, I want to invite us all to this idea of being in alignment with our mental equivalent. And for me, it's 4 pillars. But thinking, because thinking, we tend to just, it stays with thinking. We change your thinking, change your life. Yeah, if you change your thinking, that's not enough. It has to be more. Yes, it has to go through all 4 pillars of our mental equivalent. Yes. So I want to challenge us or invite us to think about thinking in terms of this, your mental equivalent, your thoughts, everything that you believe, your consciousness, your daily thoughts, your words, all of the ways that you communicate. If you speak, then your words. If you text, your type. If you type, your type. Emails, memes that you post, every way that you communicate. If you're deaf, then it's sign language, whatever it is, all of the manner in which you engage words and language, your emotions and your feelings, everything that you feel and all of the emotions that go in there, being mindful of all of that. And then the actions, everything that you do. So when we are living our lives and we're, Einstein said, my paraphrase, my remix, why are you still doing A, B, and C, expecting it to somehow turn into 1, 2, and 3? Why are you squeezing an orange, expecting apple juice to come out? Why are you doing the same thing, but you're expecting a different result? Doesn't work that way. So if we are experiencing something and we want to heal it, we want to shift it, then our invitation is to mental equivalent. What are the thoughts that I am thinking? What are the words that I am using? What are the emotions that I am feeling? What are the things, the actions that I am engaged in? Because if we want to change, we have to create a new mental equivalent. Mental equivalent. Why mental? If thinking is more than just the thoughts, if thinking includes your feelings, your words, your actions, why is it mental equivalent? For the same reason that the Kabbalion says that the universe, the all, is mind. There is only one mind, and that mind is God. Right? So for linguistic convenience, we reference it in terms of mind. And if it's mind, and mind is all there is, then there is this concept that it is a thinking, quote unquote, universe. And remember, oftentimes we are using words that cannot truly convey a lot of what we are trying to convey. The Tao that is named is not the Tao. If I'm having a conversation with, Reverend Robert or Reverend Z about, so I went to this restaurant in New York. Oh my goodness. I don't even remember what it was called, but it was so good. And both of them say, like, what did it taste like? And I'm trying to formulate the words. Like it was spicy, but it was, and doesn't matter what I say, neither of them are going to taste it. They may connect with something in their own minds that's similar. So when I say the word spicy, what comes to their mind that references that word? What comes to their mind when I say savory? But just because you have a reference point, a filter that it connects to, doesn't mean you are going to also taste it. Because no matter how many times I say water, agua, mizu, Wasser, H2O, it is not going to quench your thirst. So if we want to change our lived experience individually and collectively, then we have to shift the consciousness around what is our mental equivalent. On page 138, the first principle fundamental to the understanding of the operation of thought is that we are surrounded by an infinite intelligence. The possibility of healing disease, changing environment, attracting friends, and demonstrating supply through the power of right thinking rests entirely on the theory that we are surrounded by this infinite mind, which reacts to the direct impress of our thought, according to law that always says yes. So if you believe any of this, I believe that the universe, I believe that the law says yes and responds to what I am using, what I am stating, I believe that the law receives and the law acts, then does it not benefit us to be more mindful of what it is that we are placing into the law? And yes, Linda, sometimes language simply does not express the experience, right? Like how many times has someone described something that was so funny to them? Yeah, so we went to the amusement park and this clown and blah, 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 and it was hilarious. And then, but in the telling of the story, we're like, okay, I'm missing something. Because the words do not convey. Doesn't matter how I describe a sunset, a sunrise. the brisk air as you walk across the Great Wall of China, no matter how you describe it, it does not convey or capture the experience. True that, Linda. So, does it not benefit us to be mindful of the thoughts and the energy and the words and all of that we are putting into the law? Page 139, at the level of our self-comprehension, we know and understand the nature of God. This self-knowing, which is God knowing, has the possibility of an eternal expansion. This self-knowing, which is God knowing. This self-knowing, which is God knowing. How often do we think about this? Because we say it often, that which God is. There's only one life, and that life is God, and that life is powerful, and that life is loving, and that life is my life now. I am a divine incarnation of the One. I am an individualized expression of the universe. There is only one. We say it, but do we practice it? Do we apply it? There's a practitioner that I love, this guy, Charlie Shepard, in Asheville, who said, I want to make a bumper sticker that says, and I'm paraphrasing, "You are God, now act like it." This self-knowing is God knowing. Are we willing to practice this in that way? Now, in the extension study course, Holmes says, this ties directly into what I just said. In the life and teaching of Jesus, we do not find him depending on a power separate from himself or apart from his own being. Everything he said and did was based on the supposition that the Spirit speaks through all people. I and God are one. There is not division. There is no separation. We might say that this passes from this consciousness of faith in God to the faith of God. And faith in God, there are no doubts. Now, slight sidebar on that. There is a certain amount of doubt, because this goes into the language clarity. A certain level of doubt, a certain type of doubt is life affirming. If I just get off of work and I'm going to, or we'll say my sister Tracy just gets off of work, and she gets off of work at say 11 o'clock at night, and she's going to her car, which is in the parking garage, and it's late and it's dark, and a red flag goes off. Her intuition, I doubt that it is safe for me to walk to the car alone. That doubt is not to be ignored. Now, what people do is, I don't want to make a big deal and go get the security guard to have him escort me to the car or whatever, so I'm going to go ahead and go. And you ignore the doubt. You ignore your intuition. You ignore that red flag. That doubt is to be kept, right? The doubt that says, you know what? You have no business being a minister. You have no business trying to be a practitioner. You're not smart enough. You're not cute enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not wealthy enough. You're not tall enough. You're not something enough. You're not enough. You're not worthy. That doubt, the doubt of self, that doubt, no. We need to heal that. We need to release that. The doubt that says ministers should do everything that they do for free. How dare you ask for money? Say, what now? You're a practitioner. You charge for your prac sessions? How dare you? You should do it for free. It is God's work. Say, what now? The doubt in your holiness, the doubt in your deservingness, that doubt, heal it. Release it, surrender it, because we are moving from having faith in God to having the faith of God. Holmes reminds us in the book, The Ideas of Power, Ideas of Power. For the only God you and I will ever know is the one that we embody. Never forget that. The only God you and I will ever know is the one that we embody. Why would that be? Why would that? Because you are it, right? Like, I'm not going to know, my name is Raymont, my birth name, Raymont. I'm not going to know a Raymont as separate from me. I'm not going to know a me separate from me. I'm me. Well, if I'm me, and me is an incarnation of the divine, for there is only one, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Brahma, Om Tat Sat, I am that I am, Yod He Vav He, I am that I am ever becoming more of by being open at the top. I am it. Then if I'm it, then there is no external trying to get to know it. Getting to know me, getting to know all about me, because I'm God, I'm holy, and I'm love, right? It's about us. How do we anchor into understanding that it, life itself, the one mind, the universe, is incarnating in, through, and as us? On page 140, Holmes says, in the great universal mind, humans are at the center of intelligence. Humans are the center of intelligence. And every time we think, every time they think, they set the law, they set mind into motion, mind in action. Every time they think. You said what? Every time we think, the law says yes, and sets into motion. So how effective are we at being stewards of our thoughts, of our thinking, of our beliefs, of our believing? Are we stewarding them? You know, we talk about being an effective or good steward of one's money. Do you balance your checkbook? Do you overspend? Do you, like, whatever that is? Are we effective stewards of our thoughts, knowing that our thoughts are powerful? If there's only one mind and that mind is God, then the mind that you use is the mind of God. It is the mind that is God. It doesn't get any more powerful than that. Are you stewarding that, understanding that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and that Word was made flesh? That which you are is that. There is no you and it as separate. There is only it, and it is incarnating as you. So that same power to speak and have it manifest is the same power you have, because there is only the one mind, the one life, the thing itself, and what it is you are. Breathe. Yes, Wayne, putting on, and it's not for me, this is just me. It's not even putting it on, it's letting it shine, right? It's not putting the Christ on, because that, like, I can put a shirt on. I can put my prayer beads on, but I can also take them off. The Christ, it's a part of, it's what we are. The Buddha nature, it's what we are. There is no separation between it and. So what we're doing is revealing more of the truth of ourselves, right? Because I don't have to put Ray on. I am Ray. But do I live my life openly and boldly and out loud as Ray? Or do I dim my light? Do I hide it under a basket, right? How do we shine? How do we express? How do we live out loud? We are immersed in an infinite creative medium, which, because of its nature, must create after the pattern our thought has given to it. Once again, the law is always saying yes. Jesus understood this, and in a few simple words, laid down the law of life. It is done unto you as you believe. So then what do you believe? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about money? What do you believe about politics? What do you believe about the wealthy? What do you believe about anything? What do you believe about family, about love, about romance, about pleasure, about creativity? What do you think about any of these? Because the law is always saying yes. The moment I meet someone, so, I ran into Linda at the grocery store and Wayne introduced me to Linda, and Wayne's like, "Hey, Ray, this is Linda." I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And then 2 minutes after we leave, I'm like, "Oh man, what was her name?" Oh, I can never remember people's names. I am so bad at remembering names. I'm affirming and declaring that my memory is ineffective, right? Versus saying, sometimes it is challenging for me to remember names, but I am working on it. It's a different level of awareness. It's a different level of stewarding my thinking, my words, my emotions, and my actions. Because then the next time I run into Linda and I say, "Excuse me, we met 3 weeks ago when Wayne introduced us. Forgive me, I don't remember your name right now. Could you tell me your name again?" "Oh, hi, Ray. My name is Linda." "Thank you." And then, because I am committed, "Thank you, Linda. It is a pleasure to meet you once again." "Take care, Linda." See, now I am reinforcing, because now I am declaring and affirming that the never it's not never. The challenge is now reduced. I am changing the level and what did we say on the slide earlier? I am changing the level and the application of how I am stewarding my thinking. What is it that you believe? To believe something is to accept it as true. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Do you accept that as true? Do you accept that as the facts of your experience that are not changeable? Or is it an opinion based on collective consciousness that continues to create an experience based from collective consciousness? To hold something such as an opinion, to think something, to suppose something. What do you believe? For as you think in your heart, you must be. Now, it's interesting to note that according to the Cleveland Clinic, every day your brain processes about, that's a lot, 70,000 thoughts. That's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of thinking and the law is saying yes. So are we willing to become more mindful of our thinking? We're not going to be mindful of all 70,000, but check this out. We can become so mindful that even the 70,000, think of it this way, because we often use the example of the iceberg and what's going on in the lower section in the subconscious we're unaware of till we go to sleep and we dream and we're like, "Oh, Dungeons and Dragons. Why was that?" Because it's in your subconscious, whatever. Gotcha. The manner in which we steward the top portion of the iceberg can affect the lower portion. What we place into our conscious mind more powerfully. Once again, think of wax on, wax off, right? Daniel's son, Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid, for those who may not know. Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off, paint the fence, sand the floor, paint the fence, sand the floor, paint the house, wax on, wax off. He did it so much, consciously, so much that when he, shoulder pop, and he goes to Mr. Miyagi and he's like, "Well, I thought you were going to teach me karate." And Mr. Miyagi's like, "I have been." "No, you haven't. You've been making me clean your house and paint your floor and blah, 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 blah." And Mr. Miyagi's like, "Pop, pop." And Daniel did it. He didn't even know he was learning blocks. He just thought he was waxing a car, washing a, painting a, sanding a. But he did it so much, repetition, that the thinking and the doing became second nature. It became body memory. We can do the same thing with love, with faith, with hope, with joy, with intuition. with the power and presence of the divine, we can do the exact same thing if we are practicing it and applying it. Page 141, and this is my remix. We'll talk to that about a second. The power behind all things is without limit, but in working for us, it must work through us. Realizing then that while the power is limitless, it must become operative through our own thought. We shall see that what we need is not some greater power, but a greater consciousness, a deeper realization of life, a more sublime concept of being, a more intimate concept of an already indwelling, and my remix, all dwelling, because God's not just in us, it is all there is. So it moves in us, with us, through us, around us, above, below, to the right and the left, and it is showing up as us. A circle, circumference nowhere, center everywhere. So it is all dwelling God, which is personal to us by virtue of being personified as us. Breathe. Because that is exactly the invitation. If we're having the faith of God, it is recognizing that this power and this presence is personal to us because it is personifying as us. Do we desire to live in a world peopled with friends who love us, surrounded by things that are beautiful and pleasing? There is but one way, and this way is as certain as the sun rises each day. Daily, we must control all thought that denies the truth, that which is capital R real. We must affirm and declare the daily presence that is within us, that is us. Then, as the mist disappears before the sun, so shall adversity melt before the shining radiance of our exalted thought. Breathe. Because whatever the experience is, we have the power to shift it. We want racism to end. We have the power to heal and shift it. We want sexism to end. We have the power to heal and to shift it. Homophobia, we have the power to heal and to shift it. Whatever it is, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. But it can only be attained, it can only be experienced, it can only be realized by applying and practicing. As Holmes said in the Sermon by the Sea at Asilomar in 1959, you find me 1,000 people in the world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as it is, and I'll myself live to see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth, a world that works for all, right here and right now. Do we know what religious science is? Because we can't use it if we don't know what it is. We can't live it if we're not using it, if we don't know what it is. So our invitation, especially this Easter weekend, is to sit with the idea so that we may resurrect, that we may transmogrify and rise into a greater level of evolutionary truth about who and what we are. What is religious science? Not what it's not. Don't say, hey, Ray, what is religious science? Well, it's not, it's like Christianity, but it's not. I don't want to know what it's not. Because you can tell me what a hamburger is not. Well, it's not a fish sandwich, and it's not yogurt, and it's not ice cream, and it's not. Don't tell me what it's. Tell me what it is. What is it? And how to practice it, and how to live it. And then a new world, a new heaven, a new earth, a world that works for all, right here and right now. Breathe. And I encourage us. So if you have friends or family who are involved in CSL or New Thought, have conversation with them. Throw back and forth this idea of In your own words, what is religious science? In your words, what is science of mind? In your words, what is new thought? In your word, like, engage with one another, because our invitation is to more effectively steward our mental equivalent, to specifically, as this chapter invites us, to change the manner in which we are engaging our thought processes, our beliefs, and our patterns of habituated thought. And habituated thought, the thoughts that we think over and over and over again without ever stopping to question. Think about anything that you do that is a habit and ask yourself, what is it? Why do I do that? Where did that idea come from? Like, you may have heard the story, this young girl or young woman asked her mom one day, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off of the pot roast before you put it into the pan?" It's how my mom taught me. So the girl goes and asks Grandma, "Grandma, Mom told me we cut the ends off, put it in the pan. Why do you do that? Why did you teach her that?" "Well, it's what my mom taught me." So she goes to her great grandma. "Great grandma, why did?" "Oh, well, see, when we were, in the Depression and we only had this tiny little pan, the roast wouldn't fit in it, so we cut the ends off for it to fit." Why are we doing it today? Because it's a habit that was handed down, that until she questioned it, it was simply a hand-me-down consciousness, a hand-me-down habit, a hand-me-down belief, a hand-me-down, right? Many of our thoughts are hand-me-downs. Is it not time for a new wardrobe? Are we still putting new wine into old wineskins? Are we ready to evolve and shift? Are we ready to explore, to examine, to experiment, and to express what it means to be the divine incarnating itself? Breathe. So there's this television show that I used to watch called Inside the Actor's Studio, and the host, James Lipton, would ask the guests, series of questions. And I always marinated on the questions, because when we think of certain things, certain questions, it gives us a moment to pause, to ask ourselves, what is it that I actually believe? What is my answer to that? What causes me to have that as my answer? So it's a fun way to, explore or interview your friends and family, because it gives you greater access into revealing your thought patterns, your beliefs, and your consciousness. So, what is your favorite word? What is your least favorite word? What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally? What turns you off? What is your favorite curse word? Now, many folks will be like, I don't curse. I don't like cursing. Well, if you've ever tuned into Ministers Talking, then, every now and then a curse word pops up. Do you have a favorite curse word? Your favorite curse word might be cheese and rice. Doesn't matter. What is it? What sound or noise do you love? What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? Et cetera, et cetera. He would always ask, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say? Right? We're not going to do that one, because we know that heaven exists. We believe that heaven, state of consciousness that is within, that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. That's what we believe. So rather than that, let us ask, well, what is religious science? Science of mind and spirit. And then go through the we believe statements and explain it in your own words, as if you were talking to, because I do it with my grandson, and he's soon he'll be 13, but I used to do it when he was 10. And I explain it in a way that I know he understands it. Do the same thing. Break it down. Break it down. Breathe. So thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. I'm glad it resonated and was powerful. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody who showed up. So thank you. Now, do not forget to donate. Keep this amazing ministry going, thriving, and expanding into the world. Remember, donate. Click click it, because it helps drive the we talk about social media and stuff, it drives the algorithms to make sure that people get notifications that, wait, there's a thing called New Thought Media Network. Yes, click like. Share it on your page. Share it with friends and family, and make sure you subscribe so that you get further notifications. And do not forget, next week, April 15th, Chapter 9, Prayer, presented by my brother, my co-minister. Like, if you, wait, pause. If you've ever tuned in to Ministers Talking, then you know that Reverend Z and Reverend Robert, they get into it. It's the double Z, it's the Zorro. Reverend Briz and Reverend Z, zoom, they take it. So next week, Reverend Z will be presenting the chapter on prayer. Tune in, join in, get notified, and all that good stuff. I appreciate you for being here. And as we get ready to close out, let's simply anchor in recognizing that the isness and the allness that we call God, Spirit, Source is right here, right where we are. And we breathe, recognizing that our thoughts are God's thoughts, our words are God's words, our emotions and feelings are the ways in which God feels and emotes, and our actions are the ways in which God acts in the world. And in this moment, we move into being 21st century New Thought Good Samaritans who use the teaching. As Ernest Holmes said, we know what religious science is. We know what science of mind and spirit is. We apply it, we practice it, we use it, and we live it. And we manifest a world that works for all as a result. Breathe. Because the law is always saying yes. And so I speak this knowing that this ministry, the New Thought Media Network, is a thriving global ministry. That Reverend Robert Brzezinski is masterfully stewarding this ministry and guiding it and leading it. I speak this with gratitude simply for being offered the opportunity to come here and share and discuss and practice. And it is from this energy of gratitude that I surrender this into the law, because the law always says yes. I know that that means this entire conversation, this prayer, and the work that this ministry is doing is already answered prayer. And as I always say, we don't simply live in answered prayer. We live as answered prayer. And the law says yes. That means it's done. And so it is. Namaste, blessings, much love and appreciation, everybody. Take care. And don't forget,
please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.